Hey guys, it is Lori from Lore's World. Please go on if you have not and subscribe to the channel. I've met some amazing people. I know that you'll find the same. I'm so excited. We are interviewing a DJ from South Africa. I met him just a little bit ago through Instagram. Who knew? I've been following him. He has his own podcast. He has been in recovery. We've done some meetings together. He has graciously agreed to come on my show. I did an interview with him not too long ago for his podcast called Having a Cuppa with Chris now. So, he's here and we're going to meet him and he's wonderful. And I can't wait for you guys to meet him because he's great. But Chris, thank you really from the bottom of my heart. I really appreciate this so very much. I was just saying just a few minutes ago that it's just crazy to me. I've been doing the sobriety thing for a little over 11 years. I've always been a firm believer in, reaching out and helping those who reach out to me, but in a very small, intimate group of my friends in AA. And so with the pandemic that happened, good things come out of bad things, don't they?
Boy, you're telling me.
I jumped on to Facebook and Instagram and just joined every support group, recovery group, and they were all, closed to the public, and that was okay. And I just have found a wonderful, wonderful recovery support in the land of Instagram. And that's how we met, was Instagram and a couple of fellow friends of ours. I got to meet you in person on a daily meeting, which I wish that I could get to more often, but it cuts into my work time, but I get on there as much as I can because again, it's another outlet from not the so strict AA meetings. It's still AA based, but this HJ3 family, oh my God. Oh my
Something
God.
else, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. And it's just another outlet for me that I just absolutely adore. And that's where I met you and I adore you. And I would love, love, love for you to share your story and how you came into recovery. So it's all yours, my friend.
Thank you, darling. Well, my story began at the age of 14 when I had my first drink. But the addiction as it was to alcohol wouldn't kick in roughly up until 2 years later when I had turned 60. Leading up to all that sequence of events, I grew up in a very dysfunctional family. Abuse, emotional, physical, and psychological was the order of the day in my house. My father, sadly, whom I'm estranged from, dished it out, bar none, to both myself and to my mother. And it was only now in recovery where I had begun to work the program that I had to work out all of these events for myself. But that's how it came to be. So to give you just a short summary, the addiction would kick in at 16 and would work its way up all the way until the age of 26, where I was brought to emotional surrender. There's a whole bunch of events that had occurred in the meantime. Tried to commit suicide twice, once at 17 and again at age 22 going into age 23. Had a lot of professional and personal disappointments in the interim, and ultimately, I repeat myself, at the age of 26, it all came to a grinding halt for me, where the words, "Mum, I'm an alcoholic and an addict," came out of my mouth, just like that. And I preach to the converted when I say this. Whenever you should utter those words, of course, you are frightened for your life, because what's the response going to be? Hardship to follow par excellence. Surprisingly enough, that wasn't the case. When I admitted my addiction to alcohol and to opiates, my mother said to me, "You will not believe how long I've been waiting for you to tell me that." Carrying on in the chronology, that was 2018. Going into 2019, I had 5 months of dry sobriety. Quit, in so many words, cold turkey, but had not attended an AA meeting or went into an inpatient or outpatient program. But in that February 2019, I was diagnosed with stage 3 basal cell sarcosoma, which is skin cancer. For your viewers, there are two types. You have the sarcosoma, which is cancer cells that are just situated underneath the skin. So it's situated between the skin and the nerve system. The melanoma, however, is directly in the nerve system, which has the greater potency of going into vital organs of the system, and that's where it does the great carnage. Ultimately, within that month, by the grace on high, I was referred to a pharmacologist / oncologist who had specialized in more holistic / natural treatments.
Okay.
And I was able to go into complete remission that March. So I got the cancer diagnosis in February,
Okay.
got the remission status in March, and at the end of that month, I was in complete remission. And going into 2020, I had decided to go into an AA, or rather NA meeting, by means of someone who I had met. For your viewers, I'm a radio broadcaster here in South Africa, and it was when I had just moved from the homegrown Dutch Afrikaner speaking market into the English market that I had met someone who became my dear friend, and we got to talking one day, and she said to me, we got to talking about recovery all of a sudden, and I admitted that I was a dry alcoholic and dry addict, and she said, oh, me too. Would you like to come to an NA meeting?
Isn't
And
that funny
wasn't
how
that,
that works?
oh boy, a lot of people talk about
Crazy.
coincidence, but respectfully said, coincidence in this instance, in the topic that you and I are talking about, it's nothing but a word in the dictionary exclusively. I don't believe in coincidence whatsoever,
Me
and nor do
either.
I believe in fate or luck. We make our own luck. So ultimately, bringing the story to a close, met her when in my tenure at the English-speaking internet station that I was working at, began attending NA, and bringing it all full circle, it was around about this time that I entered the podcasting world and began to openly talk about recovery.
So what are they like there? Are they similar? Because you've been to some AA meetings via Zoom here in the States. How do they differ? Are they different?
With an NA meeting, it's musical chairs. We have this seating in a 360-degree circumference. Someone sticks up their hand and says, hello, my name is such and such, and I'm an alcoholic / I'm a drug addict, and so on and so forth. We would share collectively how our week has been, what our journey has been like. When I came along, a lot of the people had done their self-will run riot. What I found was unnecessary is the fact that if you had shared, a fellow addict would stick up his hand and offer advice or critique you. Now,
Okay.
criticism is a big no-no. As I've come to found in the American AA culture or community, whichever the term is
Mhm.
most applicable, it was round about a year. Let's say it was around about a year when I got the invite to start attending HJ3, courtesy of our mutual friend, Sarah Elizabeth.
Love her.
And what I had found is, first of all, the empathy was
Yeah.
tantamount. Secondly, where people said to one another, I love you. Those 3 words that are bartered about every given day like it's going out of fashion, I really found that people meant it. So in the
Me too.
beginning, I was very, very skittish, very shy, and very closed off because, first of all, I'm half the world away and I'm seated
Mhm.
amidst Americans. How do you openly share? Because you might have that fear of, oh my golly, someone might say, are you for real? That really was my fear. But truly, if it wasn't for the American AA communities, I don't believe I would have gotten the progress. I wouldn't have progressed in my recovery as a whole. I feel like I'm 20 to 50 steps ahead. And I'll tell you full why. When I was still in my local NA meeting, and there's another point that I'll bring up shortly, keep that in your back mind. I had gotten myself all Run Riot workbook, and I looked at it, and when my drug counselor said, you need to work through all these character defects, I threw the the docket halfway across the room.
Defects? Moi?
Whatever whatsoever you're talking about, my kind sir. But when I began reworking my program on the invitation of someone who had said, let's take a look at it, a lot of puzzle pieces fell into place. And the 12 steps for me is a recipe from start to finish. There's no ifs, buts, maybes. You don't toy with the recipe whatsoever. And I tell you, Laurie, and again, preaching to the converted because you've been in the same situation as I have, it's humbling. It's also extremely emotional. But as I've said to a lot of people, because I host a podcast myself on this very subject, you have to go through those hurdles. Because, and let me make something radiantly clear from the offset, fear will perhaps, I say perhaps in inverted commas, will be there for the rest of our lives. The grace, saving grace, however, it's benign and temporary. And I say that in capital letters, because the moment that you go through that temporary phase, that freedom on the other end is extremely everlasting, and money can't buy it. So in that instance, and this is the second point that I wanted to bring up, we as addicts should be talking about this with one another in the open. Yes, we have screwed up. Because here's where I think the stigma all comes from. There's a mindset of the moment that we have screwed up, that we can't be productive members of society because we will be ostracized. Caveat though, the risk is there. But much like with fear, it's benign and temporary. Because if fellow addicts and fellow alcoholics and the like talk with one another regularly on the subject, be perhaps a compassionate ear, or for that fact, if you are to be a counselor, it makes the process a whole lot more palatable. Because we can be. And let me tell you, I've now been in the podcasting world for almost a year. The people who I've come across, yourself included, the most compassionate, the most diverse, the most empathetic, and the most creative individuals that I've ever come across in my life. Some of us become composers. Some of us become painters. Some of us become psychologists. Some of us become artists beyond belief. And I think truly we are, in that sense, fully deserving of a second chance. Another reason why I started the podcast, and forgive me if this seems self-promoting, but it's imperative to the conversation.
Please, because I get so much out of your podcast, and I know others will as well, and I wanted to talk to you about this.
The reason why I started it in the first place, it happened by accident, but what I find is, here in South Africa, even though we have the best facilities that money can buy, we have counselors who are well-versed, we have counselors themselves who are former addicts, and so they've got the book knowledge and they've got the war scars and the street cred and the street experience. But the community being loud about it. I'm not meaning to boast, but I may well be the only South African in a populace of more than 1 million that is openly talking about recovery on social media.
Wow.
And
really?
I find I stand to be corrected on it, because even though I say it, there are people who adhere to the fact that they want to be anonymous. And if that's their stance, I'm the last one to criticize them.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to criticize, and I'm not going to say that I'm the next best thing in sliced bread. And I'd like to stress this again. It is imperative that we talk about this, that we help other people out there. Much like with the US and with Canada and with Britain, drug use and drug dealing has skyrocketed ever since the pandemic. Gender-based violence is another big aspect. Violence amongst our streets is also a prevalent theme, and I don't want to go into politics here, but I have to make the statement, our government is doing zip to zilch in helping to combat the situation. So it's not a cure for cancer, but if I'm starting to get the pot boiling and the ball rolling by hosting a podcast and getting people from first world countries to talk about their experiences and how they adopt a great mindset of recovery, and how, I almost wanted to say how magical recovery can be, but how freeing, I should rather say, recovery can be. My fellow kinsmen don't have to say it. I don't expect a response, but if I can get the ball rolling for them by, leaving an imprint on them somewhat, I can rest easy.
It is such an epidemic out there. It is such an epidemic out there.
Let me correct you there. It's an endemic, because it will carry on and on and on and on and on. It passes from generation to generation. I spoke to a gentleman at the end of the month. The 30th of September is going to be International Recovery Day, started by John Winslow, who said, this is a generational disease. It starts with one, but here's the funny part. It skips another generation, but then it affects another in a family tree line. And all throughout history, we've seen people have some sort of, and I'll use the word, finitely deficiency. If you ever were to think about it, there are some of our famous playwrights who are addicted to opium. It's been throughout the ages that addiction has been prevalent, But now in the heart of the 21st century, we're talking about it. So it's an endemic. There will be cases that still come to the fray, but still we can arm ourselves to be better prepared for it by what you and I are doing. I have to say to you as well, Laura, you mentioned now being afraid about talking of being a former addict. I want to say something that I said again. Sadly, we are going to be ostracized. So if you keep it to yourself or if you share it, well, there will be one or two people that are going to crit something that they themselves never understand. I've spoken to many people who are casual drinkers, but then they drink themselves into oblivion. And the first comment that comes out of their mouth might be, oh, cigarette smoking is extremely bad for you because it causes lung cancer. While they're saying that, they've got a beer stein about this big, filled 2/3 of the way up with hard liquor and a soft drink at the top to dilute.
Mm.
So in my country, we use the saying, talk about the pot calling the kettle black. I have to say we have to develop leather skin when it comes to situations like that.
Yes.
Because I can tell you as well, as much as there are people who are, let's use the word the normies, who will crit you, later on, somewhere a revelation might strike that will make them second guess their previous statements. And that's why I am very much an adherent to the outsider way of thinking, because we don't think the way that the normies do, because of the fact that we have an allergy, a disease, which we have to pay attention to at all times. We can't afford to be lackadaisical. And if it costs us friendships or even a family structure, much like with what happened to me, you know what?
Yeah, no, you're right.
Because when one door closes, another door will open. Because you are my family. Think about it. But surprisingly enough, you might have had the same experience as well. When I got sober and when I was in complete remission from cancer, I had to get into the mindset of changing my lifestyle completely and changing my thinking. I'm not very fond of going, even though I'm a public figure here in my native homeland, I'm not very fond of going out to public events and whatnot, not because of the fact that I'm shallow or for the fact that I think of myself as the next best thing in sliced bread, to repeat myself, but I'm very leery of temptation. I love people. I love talking to people, which is why I went into the business why I did.
Mm-hmm.
But there are one or two people that I will talk to and whatnot. And when I began opening up to a lot of people that I had been an addict, if I could illustrate for you, they look at me like this, like wide-eyed. They're like, no way, you're busy pulling the wool over my eyes. You were an addict. I'm like, yeah, I was. And surprisingly enough, as I've studied this, how we can actually be chameleonic in our active dark days about hiding that we have a disease, that everything is all fine and dandy, courtesy of a Colgate smile, but on the inside we're just crumbling and crumbling. But what I love about having those scenarios is you can share without stopping. And if people are staring at you wide-eyed, referring to the example that I've given, you've got them by the who's-its. And the more that you have them in that state and you start to share, the more that they start to listen. When it has the other effect, like what you and I referred to previously, where people will be ostracizing and criticizing, it might be because of two factors. Fear, like you've just mentioned, or pride. Let's not forget that. There are too many proud people in this world.
Yeah.
But even then, you leave an imprint on them. Not in a way that you might have thought of, okay, they're listening to me, maybe I can impart some good wisdom, but you're already planting the seed. That's all that sometimes we often need to do as that person in question builds more life experience. So it serves a dual purpose. And the reason why I say we have to develop a leather skin is I find as a lot of people in recovery are a lot more empathic, but along with empathy, there comes sensitivity. As much as we dished out give me a nice word, as much as we dished out, we are not so very keen on receiving, and that includes criticism. So it can hurt our spirits. But I feel as well, here's what I say to people a lot of times, because I've been in situations as well where I've been critiqued previous on, and then they come to me and apologize to me. I say to them, you know what, water off a duck's back for me. But, we treated you like this and that and this and the other. I say to them this one finite statement, and it ends the subject right there. I've been almost dead 3 times. Do you think I give one bit of anything that you have said my way? Nothing. Nothing. And then they're dead silent. But in the program, we are learning to be forgiving. So we learn to let go as easy, because we know that we are not in control of this life. Our higher power, mine, which is God, is in control of my life. And when situations like that occur, everything else is secondary, to tell you the God's honest truth.
You are correct. You are so correct. I love that. I absolutely love that. I've learned so much from so many different people. And when you say that, the empathy and that everybody feels, and especially in the meetings, when somebody's struggling, we love you, and we do. And I think the reason for that is we know what that
Because
person
we've
is
been there.
feeling at that moment. We know that heart.
We've been there.
You've
And
been
that's
there.
why, HJ3, for example, is perhaps one of the most safest meetings that you can get. You can scream, cuss, cry, go ballistic, the whole 10 yards.
The whole thing.
And all of us will either be smiling, will be comforting, some of us will even be crying with you.
Absolutely.
And that is imperative, because that creates the platform for reconciliation. What I mean by that is it creates a platform of reconciliation. You start to forgive yourself. We all hear we seek forgiveness, but when it comes to forgiving yourself, what's that?
What's
big
that?
Question mark plays out on someone's forehead. When I began to see that there were other people like me, using myself as a prime example, who understood what I was going through, that's where I knew that it's okay to be me. Because when you are an adherent of abuse, and I use that term lightly, make it sound like I'm a sadist because I enjoyed the stuff, none whatsoever. But because I was dished out this stuff, there's no self-image, there's no self-love. It's a French concept. At the same time, when you receive the opposite of what you have received throughout the siring years of your lifetime, that in itself creates a seed. And that seed is I was created a certain way, I was made a certain way, I think above, in the sense of not like the other person. So there's no one else like what I am. But I am what I am for others. And to me, that is the basis of self-love. Here's another thing, Laurie, that I think should also be discussed, the matter of forgiveness. A lot of people think that forgiveness is instant. Hear me, here and now, it's not. It's a continuous, ongoing process. And the reason why I often interrupt myself when it comes to a subject like this is because it's just so freeing that you almost can't put it into words. So here's how forgiveness I would summarize it. Letting your recovery, especially in its initial phase, play out the way that it does. Because there will come certain tidbits, highlights, that ultimately you say to yourself, now I get it. Now I get it. And I've only learned to forgive and love myself at year 3. It didn't happen in year 1. It didn't happen in the first 5 months. It only happened at year 3. For some people, it can happen in year 6 or even at year 10 or year 20. But it's an experience, long story short. You can't just put it into one single summary of words. But it's an experience that has to be what? The very word, experienced. And through that phase, that journey, that process, self-love starts to sire. And that's where real growth ultimately begins.
You're so wise, my friend.
I'm just me.
I absolutely adore you. I love that you did this with me. I think today we have helped a couple of people out there, my friend. I love your podcast. I'm going to put it in the description so people can listen.
I thank you. Thank you very much, Laurie, and I would like to congratulate you on this project that you've undertaken.
Thank you. I love you so much, and I mean that with every ounce of my being.
Love you too.
I love you. I'll talk to you soon.
Talk soon.
Thank you.